This morning's guest has been practicing law for almost 60 years. Not many attorneys can beat that, but I know one that can. His mother. Meet the Honorable Robinson Oscar Everett, coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at Garden City Furniture at 2444 Highway 17 Business in Garden City. We're focused on 55 years plus of practicing law in North Carolina. And we're visiting with the former Chief Judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, Robinson Everett. My father. Good morning, Dad. Thanks so much for coming in early on a Thursday morning.
It's a real treat to be here with you, Greg.
It is very exciting to think of so much going on in 55 years plus. Almost 60 years now, Dad.
It's a long time.
Of practicing law. Yeah. Anything that's really made it a passion of yours to keep it going this long? Did you ever think about retiring and maybe doing something else, being a banker or a doctor? Or
I've done all sorts of other things while I've been practicing law, so I've gotten variety. And I think I'm going to hang around as long as I can. Your grandmother was 97 when she stopped practicing law and retired. I think she was the oldest practicing attorney in America at the time. And I'd like to equal her record if I possibly can. Anyway, I want to hang around.
You say that so casual, Dad. She was the oldest practicing attorney in America. You said America, not in North Carolina at the time.
I believe that is correct. There weren't many people around who had practiced for 70 years as she had.
Right. A little more than 70. That was in 1991 when she was 97.
Actually, 1990. At the end of the year, she retired. So I think 70 was...
70 is a good number to stick with. Yes, forgive me not to interject there, but that idea, I remember when there was a piece done about her back in 1991, which highlighted that the year before when she had retired, that at the time she was the oldest practicing attorney in the country. And of course, some newspapers report it one way and maybe some another, but at least there was a consensus there on that.
She did a lot of practice.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, it's a funny thing. Apropos of the number of years I've practiced, I've been thinking back to when I took the bar exam, because just a few days ago, two of your brothers and your sister-in-law took a bar exam in North Carolina.
Just wrapped it up last Tuesday and Wednesday.
I guess that's it. I hope they wrapped it up okay. They won't know for several weeks, but at least they got their J.D. law degrees. So if they can pass the exam, they'll be able to practice.
I have called both of them repeatedly, and your daughter-in-law, my sister-in-law, Sherry, to find out how they did. I haven't heard back from them.
I haven't either.
Is that right? In more than a week now, so that's not a good sign. Yeah. At least about that. I know we've talked about something else, but they're just waiting anxiously.
I'm sure they are, and I'm waiting anxiously because your younger brother and his wife are going to come practice with me.
I don't want to act dumb about it. I am aware of it, but the excitement is, that's amazing.
At least that's what they say they're going to do. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
And it'll be Everett, just as it was when I was practicing with your grandfather and grandmother. Everett.
That's amazing, Dad. That's amazing.
Now, your older brother, he's going to live in Durham but practice in Raleigh.
Right.
So I can't get his name into it yet, but maybe there'll be four Everett someday.
You think he'd ever contemplate leaving a firm over in Raleigh to join?
I doubt it. A great firm over there that he'll be with.
Wyrick, Robbins, Yates, and Ponton, and Sam Wyrick, a former student of yours.
Seems like everybody's a former student.
You've got a lot of former students, Dad, and a lot of folks that have come in contact with you. As you mentioned, you did other things, or you've done other things over your 55-plus years of practicing. Obviously, we opened up with you being the Chief Judge retired of the Court of Military Appeals, now the Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces.
That's right. They changed the name. It was Court of Military Appeals with the acronym COMA, and that isn't too good an acronym, so... the name was changed in the mid-'90s to Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. Now it's CAF.
Yeah, it's CAF. Yeah, a little easier. Maybe not as easy to remember, but a more positive connotation there.
Right.
You know, interestingly, earlier this week, just yesterday and the day before, we had Flo Vinson visiting with us here at Garden City Furniture, who is the president of the South Carolina Bar, is the youngest of 5 children, and 3 of her 4 older brothers are all attorneys.
Oh, it's a legal family.
Absolutely, very definitely. One of them, 2 of them practice here in the Myrtle Beach area, one in Columbia, and then she's there in Florence, and her parents are in the PD. It was fascinating thinking about that idea, and earlier before we started filming this morning, the idea of you who practiced with your mother and father, whose mother practiced with her father, and who soon will be practicing, assuming they pass the bar, with your son, one of your 3 sons, and your daughter-in-law. Do you think this, does it run in the blood? Is there such a thing that people can be essentially born into the law?
Well, I'm sure that if you're exposed to it in your childhood, it sort of gets into your subconscious. Actually, when I was in college, I wasn't planning to go to law school. It was sort of a last-minute decision. I really hadn't thought about anything I was going to do. I just wanted to get my degree and be on my way. And then something happened, and I went over and applied to law school and got admitted, and things went on from there.
What could you possibly have been thinking about, let's say at that time, back in, what was it, 1948? 47?
I wasn't thinking about much of anything, to be honest with you. I was 20, I guess about 19 at that point.
Right.
And I'd had a great time in college. I'd been up at Harvard for college. I knew I was coming back to North Carolina, at least I planned to, but I hadn't really thought what I was going to be doing. And then, lo and behold, one of my classmates suggested I might want to apply to law school.
Right,
and
right.
He was doing it, and I thought that's a pretty good idea. I get a job with my mother and dad if I get admitted to the bar. So things went on from there.
So if someone asked you, were you always planning on practicing law, you'd say categorically not.
I wanted to be a detective at one point.
Oh, really? Good. We're getting it out of you. Thank you.
Yeah,
You wanted to be a detective.
I'd seen a lot of detective movies and things like that, and it sort of got my attention. So, but I didn't think very seriously even about that.
So you clearly feel like you don't feel like you were predestined to become a lawyer.
Well, I'm a Presbyterian, so I believe in predestination.
Right.
And you do what the good Lord intended for you to do. So maybe in that sense I feel predestined, but I wasn't thinking about it early on, that's for sure.
I won't beat a dead horse, but I've got to ask, do you think your parents ever encouraged you into the law? Or were they ever thinking, Robbie, you go off to Harvard, you come back?
They may have, but if they did it so subtly that I wasn't aware of it.
That's fascinating. That's very interesting. I love the idea of the detective idea. And of course you were the same way with your 3 sons, not necessarily encouraging them, 2 of them who went into teaching for more than a decade and then ultimately started law school. And
I never figured that one out. They were not talking about going to law school. I would have tried to encourage them, but they didn't seem to be going in that direction.
Any vivid, when you think back, of course, you were with us last summer. We filmed at East of Chicago Pizza. You actually gave us 3 days last summer in the heat of the summer.
It was fun.
To be with us, which was great filming up there. And, of course, you had some great memories from your time there at Harvard Law School prior to actually joining your parents' firm or taking the North Carolina bar. You know, as you think back to that time, and there's so many things we want to touch on today, and hopefully you'll be willing to come back and be with us tomorrow, since you don't get down to the Garden City area very often. But just reflect back to 60 years, back to when you were in Cambridge, Massachusetts in law school. What were some great memories that really stick out in your mind?
Well, there's some very interesting memories. One thing I remember, after seeing Flo Vinson this morning, president of the South Carolina Bar, a woman, and thinking back on my mother, and then I reflected that there were no women at Harvard Law School when I was there.
Right.
I guess we had around 1,500 students, all men. They did not allow women to the year I graduated. After I graduated, they figured it was safe for women. They let them come. But but there were no women. So that's one thing that has changed. Things are a lot more sophisticated now.
Right.
Your students sit around the classroom with computers.
Do all the students in your classrooms have computers?
Most of them seem to.
Most of them.
Yeah. And in the law offices, the computer is very much relied on.
Right.
So that's quite a change over the years.
Right.
I had some wonderful classmates at Harvard, many of whom went on to some great things. Ironically, just very recently, I saw that one of my classmates, who I think very highly of, who's in the U.S. Senate, has had some problems, been indicted.
Who's that?
Ted Stevens.
Oh no, golly, yeah.
A wonderful guy. I can't believe it. I not only presume he's innocent, I believe he's innocent, but I don't know the details. But you know, you get a chance to meet some really extraordinary people, and
right.
That was one of the nice things about law school.
You had some great professors up there. Any that really stick out in your mind? The dean at the time, was that Erwin Griswold?
Erwin Griswold, who he was Solicitor General, I guess, under Richard Nixon. He was a very outstanding scholar, a wonderful professor. A funny thing comes to mind. In my second year in law school, I had illness and had to be in the hospital for a while, or college infirmary, and I couldn't go to class. My mother, who had been a legal secretary for my grandfather before she became a lawyer, came up to take care of me and also sat in on class. And the dean, as I understand it, saw this lady sitting there taking notes very strenuously and very carefully, and he thought she was some sort of reporter. And he was about to throw out of the classroom when somebody told him that she was actually my mother, and he let her stay. Not only that, they later became acquainted, became good friends, and also one other interesting thing, I think I did better that semester than I did on some other semesters.
With her taking notes, yeah.
She took very good notes.
That is great. What was that like, having her up there in Cambridge, staying there? Did she stay with you, or she stayed separate?
Well, I was in the hospital. I think she stayed in the rooming house where I had a room. I'm just not sure.
Right, you don't remember. Yeah. You do remember, though, interestingly, graduated 4th in a class of 455, or maybe you wouldn't remember that. I saw that recently. And
I think I was in the top 1%, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So I guess that would fit.
Great opportunity there, and of course to think about coming back to Durham. Then we talk about Durham as your home place. Obviously, growing up there, we also talk about the classroom. When I say about you in the classroom, you've been teaching there at Duke Law School.
One other thing comes to mind apropos of Harvard. I was on the Harvard Law Review, and I remember the people who were our presidents of the Harvard Law Review. It took a lot of skill. So I have been interested in noticing that a presidential candidate was editor-in-chief of the Harvard Law Review.
And that's not John McCain.